There's this notion which I think a lot of small and medium law firms run with. Whatever the managing partner wants, they get, which is quite interesting because even when you're doing the rankings for law firms, there are certain distinguishing factors that exist. So that's something that captured my attention. And then also he mentioned about hit or miss tactics. But now to round up our conversation on something different, with the age of AI, do you have a policy in mind or you've set up in your book to address AI, the use of AI in terms of running law firms? Because AI is a powerful tool, especially when it comes to administrative tasks. Because there are certain tasks you can delegate, but there are others you can't. So one, do you have that? Number two, you've spoken about several policies. How do you inculcate all these policies while trying not to risk employee fatigue? Because a lot of these policies, you will create them, but at the end of the day, you have to pass it down to other people because you're the vision bearer at the end of the day. So how do you now pass it on to your people and ensure that there's implementation of the same? Because this can be a stellar set of policies, but if there's no one to really implement these policies, then it doesn't really make sense. Then the third question is from Musioka Andrew Thiwa. How do you create referencing regime for documents and files? Then there is NWA who had an opinion, and I will get to that. But importantly, he raised his hand, so his or her hand, I'm not sure what gender. So would you like to unmute your mic and ask your question?
Thank you.
Oh, it's a beautiful, it's a her. Please proceed.
Yes. On the last policy, which Senior was discussing on the medical emergency, we've seen in recent times, colleagues passing on as young as 2020, 2021, 2022, even 2023 admitted colleagues. The question is, for those who were sole proprietors practicing alone, this policy on medical emergencies, how do we go about setting up an emergency that helps in the event that sole proprietor, who is the clerk, who is the advocate, who is the process server in their law firm, how do we inculcate a medical emergency policy that captures these issues and also enables the person who takes over their firm in the event of their passing, that they either take on this policy and actually help with the workload that is left behind? I know I may have jumbled two questions in one, but I know Senior will try and make sense of it. Sorry, my name is Onboy. I've been in practice for 5 years now.
Well, I'm insisting on us introducing ourselves because this is a platform that he's creating for us to get to know each other. So I'll now hand over to Sonia to address those questions.
Okay, thank you for that bit. Now, someone asks, I can't remember the name, how do you inculcate or pass on these policies? Now, the structure of a policy in itself provides for the implementation aspect. The policy in itself does not just talk about, the responsibilities, the procedures, the consequences only. It goes on to talk about how will that policy be made available to members, of staff. How is that policy going to be, applicable on a day-to-day basis? But in all this, I gathered that the best way to inculcate or pass on these individual policies is by creating a handbook that you'd always resort to in case of doubt or in case of uncertainty. So for me, and I believe, which is my approach, is to have a tangible, to have a physical, like a handbook that talks about all these policies, so that you can have reference to them as and when the need is there. So I hope that answers that question. Then there was a question about AI policies, and admittedly, as I've been doing research on these policies, I also realized that there is scanty information touching on AI policies. But interestingly, from the Canadian jurisdiction, from the Canadian bar itself, from the Singapore bar itself, and I believe the American bar, they've been very active on the question of use of AI by advocates, or attorneys as they would term them. And I tend to agree, and I'm persuaded by the fact that AI policies should be strict to the level that AI should not replace expertise while trying to provide solutions, legal solutions for a client, because the American courts have held advocates or attorneys liable for relying on AI and jeopardizing the cases of their clients. And I think we've seen a few of these cases circulating in some of the groups that we are in. So for me, AI should be adopted with, I don't know how to put it, but should be adopted with a lot of, there's got to be a lot of consideration before fully adopting any AI policy. So there was a question from Sioka on a referencing regime for files. Now this aspect of DMS, the document management systems, it's a very interesting system. I thought I understood it quite well until I realized that so many firms have resorted to onboarding the services of document managers, outsourcing experts and professionals who deal with document management. Now, part of the items, part of the deliverables when it comes to document management is this referencing regime. So you'll find that within different professions, the regimes are different. I mentioned something earlier on about, very confidential documents. How do you secure the how do you ensure that the confidentiality is maintained? And I'm assuming you go to a particular service provider who does document management. You've got wills, for instance, of prominent people that you've decided for one reason or another to have them stored there. What is the classification of such documents in terms of a referencing regime? So this is a question that can best be answered with or by someone from one of these service providers. But all in all, there is an indexing formula that they'd use for the files. I remember some years back, we adopted this process of scanning all the office documents, and it ended up that it looked basic, but it was very, it was tamper-proof in the sense that the storage mechanisms, they are storing them on the, on cloud devices, but they are basically engineered in a, in a normal way that you'd have a folder and subfolders and, all those other items. So I think that one answers that question.